Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. I'm also excited to share my book, Straight from the Admissions Office, a review of my biggest takeaways from the first few hundred podcast episodes. It's packed with direct insights from admissions professionals and practical tips to help students and their families navigate the college admissions process. You can find all of the information in the show notes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Grace Petry, who's the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. Now, we had Hobart and William Smith Colleges back on episode 23, which was released in April of 2022. So, Grace, it is an honor and pleasure to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me, John. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to talk about our admissions process and helping parents and students all around.
Well, that's terrific, and we truly appreciate you coming on. So, I've noticed that Hobart and William Smith Colleges, Grace, often use the phrase preparing students to lead lives of consequence. It's clearly a cornerstone of your mission. Grace, can you share how that ideal plays out in the student experience starting from that first year on campus?
Yeah, so there are a lot of ways. So leading lives of consequence has a lot of different meanings to people. I feel like for me, it means what legacy will I think of when you come to campus or when I hear your name. But I did actually interview three of our students to ask them what leading lives of consequence meant, and I really loved all the different answers. So one of our students said that she now understands the effects her actions have on others as well as herself, and how her passions and interests shape those actions. So, very interestingly, two students said that you don't realize you're leading a life of consequence until usually your junior year. So, you are doing it from the first year, but in junior year, it really starts to shape how the students see themselves and just the students in general. So another student said that, for her, leading a life of consequence means taking advantage of the most life can give to you. So she said one way we do that is as early as your first year seminar. So when you're here in the fall, they actually show you the library, and they show you all the resources that we have at HWS, like our 12 centers, the library, the different floors, research, whatever you can do. And the beauty of this is it teaches you that you can advocate for yourself and develop relationships. So when you're a senior, you really look back and see how those resources have helped you and what they've offered you through life in general. And then the last way, leading a life of consequence for another student. And all these students, by the way, were senior interns at the admissions office. So they have graduated. I went to commencement and it was a really fun time. But another student said that leading a life of consequence for her meant that it means that HWS prepares students to not only be well educated, but also how to hold themselves accountable and think of others. So, one way she said this happened is as early as her first year, she got COVID for the first 2 weeks. We all remember COVID, right? So,
Sure
um,
do.
yeah, right. So she was out for 2 weeks. And in high school, it's a little different, but her professor held her accountable and said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You really, really have to work hard in order to catch up. So I really love to hear that story because it showed her time management as early as first year and that, oh, I really have to advocate for myself in college. So, yes, long story short, we do help students lead lives of consequence. And the difference from even junior year to senior year is astronomical when it comes to HWS.
Well, I love how you turned to your students, right, and shared their experiences in answering that question, which really shows a lot in terms of the culture and climate at HWS. You talked about passion, you talked about taking advantage of life, advocacy, and of course, thinking about others. Now, Grace, one thing that really stood out to me in my research was your unique coordinate system, of course, at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. where Hobart is the men's college and William Smith, of course, is the women's college, but students share a unified campus experience. For those unfamiliar with this model, Grace, can you explain it and how does it influence both academic and social life at HWS?
Yeah, of course. So it is the coordinate system, which is pretty cool here. But I will mention that it is funny because it is colleges, right? So some people think it's a typo, the S at the end. But honestly, the S at the end of colleges is a nod to our history as two colleges. But we have been one institution, one board, one campus, one faculty, one curriculum, one president, etc. for decades. So a big misconception is that, Hobart is for men, William Smith is for women, but we have co-ed everything. So the athletic teams work out together, same faculty, same funding as well. So there's a lot of different things when it comes to that. And we are definitely moving more away from the coordinate system. So in 2022, when I first started working here, so when you had the other podcasts, we used to have students pick Hobart or William Smith or Hobart and William Smith on their diploma. Now it's just Hobart and William Smith. And we used to do deans by Hobart and William Smith, and now it's based off your first year seminar. So I'll tell you the biggest differences when it comes to the coordinate system is our sports teams. I'd say that's where I see it the most. So we have the Hobart Statesmen, purple and orange, and then we also have the William Smith Herons, who are green and white. That's why we have four colors, so it is fun. You get to pick what you want, right? Um, Biggest difference is Hobart Statesmen. They have D1 lacrosse, whereas William Smith has D3 lacrosse. So that's a big difference when it comes to them. But when it comes to the students on campus, you can choose where you want to live. You could have Hobart housing or William Smith housing or Hobart and William Smith housing, just like every other college, men or women or together. So lots of different things when it comes to that, but definitely fading a lot more away from the coordinate system.
Well, we appreciate that overview and the history since you've been there starting in 2022. And of course, I know a lot of people are very interested, of course, in those qualities that you look for when reviewing those applications. And so, when reviewing applications, Grace, what are the qualities or experience that tend to signal that a student would thrive at HWS?
Yeah, so at HWS, when I'm reading applications and my colleagues are, we're looking for the student with the whole package. We're not just looking for good grades. We're not just looking for you were involved in a lot of activities. We want everything. So we do the holistic approach through and through here. Sometimes we even have three people read an application. So that's really good to know that, I look at activities, essay, rec letters, and grades. So it's not just based off your transcript. I'd say the biggest thing for me as a reader is the activities. I like to see what you do and the rec letters. The rec letters hold a lot to me because these teachers and your counselors know you the most compared to if I didn't interview with you yet or haven't met you, then it really adds color to the application. So that's definitely what stands out. The biggest thing with HWS is just getting involved. We really love community service. So that's a big thing we'll look at is if you're helping your community or want to help your community, because that is a huge part of Geneva in general, but also HWS.
Well, we appreciate that. Obviously, you're looking for everything in your holistic approach. You are looking at the grades and the activities. One of the things that you mentioned, though, were those letters of recommendations. And I know that a lot of people that listen to my podcast are actually college counselors. Many of them work in public schools, private schools, independent. For those school counselors that write letters of recommendations for their students, do you have any pieces of advice, particularly for school counselors, in terms of what to include and maybe things not to include in, again, those letters of recommendation?
Yeah. So every school does it very differently, which is always interesting for me to see with the letters of rec. The biggest thing I love is when school counselors they bold the words that are the most important. So while I'm reading the whole rec letter, these really stand out to me, like natural leader, helps out in the classroom, part of all these activities. A big thing that I love in the letters that school counselors do, or even teachers, is they tell me what the student does outside of the classroom or inside the classroom because I feel like some students think activity wise they don't have to put a lot and then they're involved in a lot. So there's been a few times where a student will just put football, which takes a lot of commitment, but then the counselor and the teacher will say they're also president of this club and they help out their elderly grandma at home like 50 hours a week and all these activities. And it really just helps me see that the common application really is black and white. And that's why the rec letters are the most important for me.
Well, I appreciate you giving that example where a student might only talk about playing football, for example, which, as you put it, is a tremendous commitment.
Mhm.
But he's also president of this club. And by the way, he has to help an elderly relative. Those are all things, students, that are very important to include in the overall package. Whether you have a part time job, you have to help a relative, perhaps you have to get a younger sibling off the bus after school, so you have to be there for them. All of these things are very important to create a total package so that you're not leaving it up to people like Grace in admissions to speculate as to why perhaps you're only listing one thing. Again, if you have that part time job or you have to get home to help siblings. So make sure that you're very mindful of creating a comprehensive package, if you will, when putting together the overall application. Now, Grace, every college has institutional priorities when it comes to shaping their incoming freshman class. And one of the most common priorities is class size. So, what is Hobart and William Smith's target class size for the incoming freshman class? And how many applications do you typically receive to meet those goals?
Yeah, so the target class size for this incoming class for fall of 2025 was 500, but we normally get around 5,500 and 6,000 apps. Definitely seeing more of an uptick since we added early action about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. We added early action, so that is a big thing that we're seeing. Um, in order to meet the goal of those applications, a big thing that we do is our outreach. We really love the fact that we are relationship rich, as I think our listeners have seen from the first question I answered, just with talking to students. But our relationship rich education and relationship rich admissions counselors really help out students by, maybe they didn't know their counselor hadn't submitted a recommendation letter yet. So we'll actually reach out to students and tell them about the awaiting materials. And this helps us meet that goal for sure.
Well, we appreciate that. So, you're looking to admit a class of 500 students and you receive 5,500 applications. And I like to share that data just to look proportionally in terms of how many people apply and ultimately how many matriculate. Now, Grace, beyond class size, are there other institutional priorities that play a role in your review process as you evaluate those applications each year?
Yes. So with our institution, we really do the holistic approach, as I've mentioned. So a big thing that happens in the review process is that we really do look at everything. And we do have three readers sometimes. So I will read an application and I'll actually send it to another reader so that they can check my work and also a different point of view, right? I know my territory the most, but they might not know it yet. So that's really cool to see the fact that two people are reading it, and if we can't come to a decision, then a third reader will read it. So I really love that about our institution, that this plays a role in our review process.
Yeah, well, you definitely want to get it right. So, to your point, you have two people reading it, if necessary, or even a third, which again is being very mindful of the students and, of course, picking the best freshman class for HWS. Now, HWS has been test optional for some time now. Given that experience, how do you advise students who are unsure whether to submit scores, especially in borderline cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get this question a lot actually on the road. So yes, we have been test optional since 2006. So before COVID, the people coming in for next year before they're even born, right? We really don't believe that one test should make or break your future. Very different than when I applied for college, I will say. So wish I knew about HWS when I was applying, but now we're here and I get to talk about it. But for borderline cases, I would say submit them. I would say 50% of our students submit them, 50% don't. But when it comes to the test scores, it doesn't determine anything. So there's no merit scholarship based off your SAT or ACT score. If we see them, we're really looking at overall how you perform in the classroom. So for me, I can't talk about all my colleagues, but for me particularly, if you have a really high SAT score, but a bit lower GPA just because, the everyday tasks, you can do a test really well, but not the everyday tasks. And I'll look at rec letters as well in the essay. But that really shows to me that, okay, you can do everyday tasks in college, whereas the higher SAT score and a bit of a lower GPA or not a lot of rigor in your schedule shows me a different side. So there's nothing wrong with submitting the test scores. I would say if it's borderline, that you can submit them and we do look at them, but if you don't want to, it really doesn't affect anything when it comes to HWS.
Well, I'm glad you shared the data that 50% of your students submitted. Of course, the other 50% did not. And you've been test optional since 2006, so it wasn't the pandemic that brought it to HWS. Now,
Right.
demonstrated interest often matters at smaller colleges, right? Like HWS. Grace, how does it play into your review process? And what's the most authentic way students can really show their engagement with HWS?
Yeah. So we actually don't take into account demonstrated interest at all. We do encourage students to connect with their admissions counselor or with admissions office in general and an interview. So our interviews are optional, but I always highly recommend them because they really add color to the application and the Common App is very black and white. So when I interview students, really nice to see them, see their face, see what they look like, where they're from, and learn all about themselves that they can't necessarily put in those 250 words in Common App. So, an example I can tell you is that I was actually about to deny a student because of their application. Everything, essay, rec letters, grades, just something wasn't adding up, and it raised a red flag for me. So I reached out to them and asked them to do an interview, and they did the interview and it cleared everything up, and they were admitted, and now they're enrolling for next year, right? So
That's
that
awesome.
really helps. The interview really does add, and it's only 30 minutes. It's a casual conversation, just like this, like what John and I are doing. And it's with your admissions counselor, or it could be with a senior intern, or it could be with any admissions counselor. So it is a great way. We do virtual interviews and we do on campus interviews as well.
Well, that's great advice. You're saying that the interview is optional. However, students take advantage of it. Grace just shared a story of a student who was probably on the fence, but because of the interview, was actually admitted and now will be enrolling. The interview gives you an opportunity to bring your personality to life. Now, Grace, of course, another piece of the application that can help do that are those personal statements. So, what makes a personal statement resonate with your team? And can you share an example of one that really stood out?
Yes. So I think the great thing about HWS is that we don't require any supplemental essays. So it really is the college essay. If you want to submit supplemental, you're more than welcome. A lot of students don't like to do more work, right? So especially during that process. But one essay that I think really stood out to me, and to answer your question as well, the thing that stands out to me when I'm reading personal essays or personal statements is the passion that's coming from the essay. I can tell when a student writes about something that maybe a parent wanted them to write about or a teacher, and it's very obvious that they were not passionate about it. So, one essay this year that really, really stood out to me, and it was a guy who wrote it, was how the ability to forgive is one of the strongest traits a person can have. It was a really, really beautiful essay about how you have to forgive yourself first and the mistakes you've made in order to forgive other people, and that holding grudges really isn't how you should look at life. And he said it brought him a lot more peace and less stress. And it was just a very, very beautiful essay. And you could tell how passionate he was about it. And another one I read was a girl wrote about a flower called Queen Anne lace. I've never heard of this flower before, but it was really cool how she wrote about it, how I got to see it sort of in my head, the imagery of what Queen's Anne lace was and why it was so important to her. So, my biggest advice would be write about something you're passionate about. If your teacher says don't write about that, or your parent says don't write about it, it is very obvious in the writing style that you are not as passionate about that topic.
Well, that's great advice. I love the two examples, and it really points to the fact, students, to just be careful also not to write about something that's already found in your application. For example, maybe you're a soccer player and you write in your personal statement all about soccer. Now, if you have a passion story related to soccer, as Grace put it, that's fine, right? But you want to make sure that each part complements each other in the overall application and builds upon the next without necessarily repeating something that's easily found on a transcript or on the activity sheet. So, again, Grace, we appreciate those examples. And as you look at recent application cycles, Grace, have you noticed any changes in what makes an applicant stand out to your team, whether it's in their academics, their involvement, or how they express their fit with HWS?
Yes, so we have changed the way that we look at applications a lot. So we have always been holistic. So again, looking at everything, I'll tell you, John, sometimes an application takes me 20 minutes to read because it's a hard one. Other times it could take me 10 minutes, right? Other
Right,
times it's 2 minutes. It really
right.
depends on the application, the counselor, the student, but or if I knew them, right, from the interview. But one thing we've really changed from when I first started in August of 2022 is that we really didn't look activities a ton. I feel like we focused more on how many APs the student was taking and, what classes they were taking, what their GPA was. We focused on rec letters, essay activities, but I felt like not as much as we definitely do now. Now it's really, okay, I'm looking through the whole application. I really want to see what activities you do. I really want to see what classes you take, and I want to see if you challenge yourself. So, a big thing my colleagues and I look at is what your school offers. So, if your school doesn't offer a lot of APs, totally okay. We're not going to penalize you for not taking 3 or more APs, right? If they don't offer it. But for Long Island, I'm originally from there, so I know this. We offer like 30 APs, right? And like 60 honors. So sometimes IB classes depending on the school. So when I see that a school offers that much and you haven't taken any APs, that sort of raises a red flag for me. So definitely make sure you're taking advantage of what your school offers when it comes to the activities, the APs, the honors, and even the teachers. So if you take English honors and not an AP, that's something we'll look at as well.
This is your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. Sean, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to announce that Prep Expert is the official title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. This has been a partnership in the works for a while now, and I'm so glad we got it off the ground. We're so excited to work with families, parents, students of the College Admissions Process podcast at Prep Expert to help them through our live online SAT and ACT courses not only improve their SAT and ACT scores, but help them get into college as well as win hundreds of thousands of dollars in college scholarships. Thank you so much for the partnership, and we are so excited to work with your families.
Thank you, Sean. And to learn more about how Prep Expert can support your child's academic journey, visit prepexpert.com today, and best wishes to all. Well, I appreciate you talking about the fact that, of course, you're looking at student applications based on the context of the school in which they attend. Now, I have to ask a follow-up questions because I could
Yeah.
hear some parent voices in my head. So if you are at a school, as you put it, that offers 30 AP courses for Hobart and William Smith, what's the appropriate amount? What would you advise? And I know that it's not a one-size-fits-all, Grace, but is there a number that you're looking for?
Yeah, I would say, especially if they offer that much, I would say we're definitely looking that you took an AP in either English or science or history. But for me, I see a lot of students in Long Island taking about four. And then you have people who are crazy and take like nine, right? So it really depends um, on what
Right.
it is. I would say APs are definitely not the make or break when it comes to transcripts in general. I think a big thing that we like to see is that you in senior year, you still challenged yourself.
Right.
So when I see a student's just taking gym class, for example, and art, but they don't want to take math or science or English, that also sort of raises a red flag that they are done senior year, right? And don't
Right.
want to do anything
Right.
else. You can have study halls here and there, which is totally okay. But yeah, I would say probably 4 to 6 we are looking for if your school offers that many.
Yeah, and that's a fair number, again, in a school that offers 30, because you're basically touching upon one AP course per academic subject, right? Math, science, social studies, English. I know you didn't say world language, but I'll throw that in there. So between 4 and 6, if you go into a competitive school, certainly makes a lot of sense. Now, Hobart and William Smith colleges offer several specialized programs such as environmental studies, education, public policy, and so much more. Grace, what unique considerations should students keep in mind when applying to these programs? And are there specific factors that might influence how their applications are reviewed?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. So, the beauty of being a liberal arts college is that you actually don't declare your major until sophomore year of college. You can declare it a bit earlier if you wanted to, but when you're applying to Hobart and William Smith colleges, you're just applying to Hobart and William Smith colleges. You're not applying to a public policy school or environmental studies school. It's just Hobart and William Smith colleges. And then when you come here first year, you tell your advisor what you want to do, and you'll take those classes and some other ones. And I think the beauty of that is that, for example, my senior intern this year said that he wanted to do architecture. So he was going to go to a big school that had an architecture school. And he got here, John, his first year, took 2 architecture classes, said, nope, this is not for me, right? So it is nice for us that during the application process, we want to see what your interests are, but we're not admitting people, for example, into economics, like, oh, we have 50 spots, so we're only going to admit 50 people. You're just getting admitted to Hobart and William Smith, and then we figure out the rest as you go through your college experience.
Fantastic. And of course, financial aid is such an important piece for so many families out there. So, financial aid can be a stress point, as we know, for these families. Grace, what should students and parents know about how HWS approaches need based aid, merit scholarships, and even appeals?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I will say, because when I tell parents and students our price, they usually walk away from my table before I'm done talking. So the biggest thing I'll say is when you're applying for college, especially at HWS, don't let the sticker price fool you. HWS can be as affordable as a smaller school or a state school, right? I feel like a lot of people think SUNYs are really cheap, but I've actually had some students paying less to come here, again, depending on your financial circumstances. But one way we do this is that almost every student gets a merit scholarship based on their GPA and what classes they're taking. So while our application process is holistic, our merit scholarship is just based off GPA, what classes you're taking. The big thing I want to mention with GPA is we take the highest GPA. So we take weighted GPA. So if you're taking APs or honors or dual enrollment, we take that into account. And if your school doesn't do weighted, we actually recalculate it for you to get the best possible merit scholarship. We don't meet 100% need for all families, but we are very generous with our financial aid. So we use the FAFSA, and students find HWS an affordable option for them. Another thing that we do is that we listen to appeals if families feel like the FAFSA doesn't accurately reflect their financial situation. So the appeal process is really great. You put a paragraph or 2 about why you might need more money, and the FAFSA is a year old, which we totally understand. So we try to work with families based off that. And to add to merit scholarships, just because I'm in charge of them, I love to talk about them. We have 7 specialty scholarships. So we have 5 performing arts scholarships, and then we also have 2 other scholarships. So for performing arts scholarships, we have dance, creative writing, music, theater, art studio/architecture, and you'll apply for that. After you apply for HWS, you can apply for that right on your application portal. The performing arts scholarships, you don't have to major or minor in it. You just have to be part of it all 4 years, and you get $3,000 on top of merit every year if you were to get that scholarship. Another one we have is our Centennial Scholarship and our Civic Engagement Scholarship. So our Centennial Scholarship, that's our leadership scholarship from the Centennial Center, which is one of the 12 centers that I sort of briefly talked about before. And this scholarship is for leaders. So if in your rec letter says you're a leader, and then you'll write an essay or sort of a paragraph or essay, depending how much you want to write about your leadership capabilities, what you've done, then that's an extra $2,500 on top of merit every year. And our Civic Engagement Scholarship is our community service scholarship. So Geneva really loves to give back to the community because we have a population around 13,000. So you write a paragraph or essay again about what you've done for your community and why you want to continue to help out Geneva community. Also an extra $2,500 on top of merit every year. So you only get the performing arts scholarships or Centennial or Civic. You can't get both, but that's a lot of money over the 4 years if you were to get it. So I always recommend students apply for those scholarships, and you have to apply after your application. So you submit your application if you're doing early action. All that has to be due November 15th as well, or for regular decision, March 1st.
Well, that, Grace, was definitely one of the most comprehensive responses of all the
Sorry.
podcast episodes. No, don't be sorry. That was fantastic. Definitely one of the most comprehensive of all the podcast episodes related to financial aid. So, Grace, I always put the Office of Admissions in the show notes. If you have any of the links related to financial aid, your scholarships, or anything else, obviously send them to me and we'll make them available to everyone listening in the show notes. Now, AI is becoming more integrated into various aspects of higher education. Is Hobart and William Smith using AI in the admissions process or in communication with prospective students? And if so, Grace, how does it impact the way you review applications and engage with applicants?
Yeah, so we don't use AI at all. So we do honestly have three readers look over an application sometimes,
Right.
usually two, but sometimes we'll have three. Sometimes we even have a general committee on top of three. So definitely don't use AI whatsoever. It's always me looking at your application or other admissions counselors. I think the beauty of that is I actually, and as we were talking about before, that student, I actually reach out to all of my students who were admitted about what I loved about their essay.
That
And
is awesome.
it is awesome. It's
Personal
honestly
touch.
I really love it because it shows them that a real person's reading these essays here at HWS, and you can just see if I tell them in person, their eyes light up. They're like, "Oh my goodness, I worked so hard on that." I'm like, "I know, I could tell." So, I really love that about us, that we don't use AI whatsoever, and when it comes to communications, that comes all from us, and we draft it all ourselves. So and our operations team drafts them as well, but no AI is used for those.
Well, you're definitely showing off your personal touch. And I'm going to share a story that one of my dearest friends, his child, his daughter, is going to be there. She's a student athlete. She's going to be matriculating in the fall. And he just shared how there was a regional event where someone who just graduated offered their house for everyone from our region to come and meet. And you were there. He knew you personally. And so, a great example of a school that really has that community collaborative feel. So I commend you and your entire team on the great work that you're doing. Now, Grace, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I asked you a lot of questions, but I always like to ask representatives at the end, is there a question that I didn't ask that you wish I had, or a topic that didn't come up that you'd like to share with us now?
Yeah, so we've mentioned it throughout and what you're saying with the admitted student reception in Long Island, just our relationship bridge education. So when I first came here to tour, I actually went, so sort of like students will do, I went on a tour when I was interviewing for this position as assistant director of admissions, now senior assistant director. And I really loved the relationship bridge education I saw. But not being an alumni from here, I honestly thought it was a gimmick. I was like, okay. And then working here, it really, really is amazing the relationships you make here with your professors, admissions counselors, everyone. And to go back to leading lives of consequence, I had one of my first years. I also reach out to all my first years and ask how they're doing. You know, students with their emails, so I don't get a lot of responses, but I get a few. And I've kept in contact with him, and it's really awesome to see him sit there and see the confidence, honestly, exude from him. He wasn't as confident when we first met, and now a first year at Hobart and William Smith, he was so confident in that chair, telling me everything he did, everything he's gonna do. And I really love that about us is that we can have these relationships. Another example is like the Long Island Mid Student Reception. I had one last year. It was during spring break. I didn't think anyone would come, no professor, no student. I had a professor drive 6 hours to get there because they couldn't
Wow.
come with me. And as Long Islanders know, right, in New York City, 6 can turn to 8 really fast. So, it was pretty awesome to see that he wanted to come. And I also had a student and her whole family who are from Garden City come to that reception as well. And
Wow.
the reason I mention that is because with spring break, you would think no one wants to go. You know, admissions doesn't have off during spring break, but faculty do, students do. And I still had people come. And these students are admitted, they're not even enrolled yet. So they just want to talk about HWS and the value of HWS and what it's given them. So I think that shows relationship rich. And that professor then met up with students who graduated 5 years ago in the city to get lunch with them. So
Amazing.
it is pretty amazing the relationships you make here with everyone. President Guerin, and Mary Guerin, they open their house every Friday for students to come, and they actually cook for them. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are so many examples of the rich culture, the community, from before students are actually on campus, right? Before they even start as freshmen, your reception. I mean, the president's opening. I'm sorry, did you say it was the president and his wife?
Yeah. So President Gearin and his wife, Mary Gearin, they
Oh,
open their house every Friday. Your dear friend's daughter actually went, so that was
that's
pretty
great.
cool. But yeah, they open their house every Friday, and before admit student days, we have prospective students come by and see what it could be like being at HWS. Another thing that the president does is they actually make brownies for students during finals week. So
Wow, that's amazing. That is
yeah, they'll
amazing.
go to the library and hand them out. And a great thing that we have here is matriculation day. So that's Sunday, right before orientation. Students actually get to shake President Gearin's hand and Mary Gearin's hand on the quad of where they're going to graduate 4 years from then. So it's a full circle moment.
That's so cool. That really is. I appreciate you sharing that. And this has been a tremendous conversation. Anyone who's interested, I know that they gained so many insights thanks to your time today, Grace. We really appreciate you. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Yes, that is a great question. So, one of my advices would be to connect with your admissions counselor or connect with the admissions office. But again, the Common App really, really is black and white. We really don't get a lot of context from it unless we get to actually meet you. So even emailing with us, then we know your name, we know, things about you. I love seeing students when they email me in the fall and just say, "Hi, I'm interested in applying this year. This is everything about me. Would love to talk." Or have a phone call or something like that. So definitely connect with your admission counselor early on at that college, especially our college. The second thing is doing an interview. So that is really, really important. We have seen, especially since COVID hasn't ended, but it's definitely not like how the pandemic was. So we've seen it be less of a priority for students to do an interview. But again, I highly, highly recommend doing an interview, especially for HWS, because it really lets us know you as a student, but also as a person too. And it's a really fun time for us and the senior interns. And then the third thing I'll say is just for the essay, again, honing it in, just write about what you're passionate about. So even if you have football in your activities, but you won a game and, it taught you a life lesson and you're very, very passionate about that, recommend writing about that or just writing about something different. So, John, another essay I loved is that the first line was, "I hate milk." And it was all about how everyone told him he has to drink milk to grow taller because he was a little shorter. And he did grow, so it was great. But he was really passionate about it. And it was really, really interesting for me to read that essay. And I just love unique essays like that.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that the topic could really be about so many things, right? Like
Right.
drinking milk. So, I'm glad you shared that third example now in terms of essays. So, students, connect with your admissions counselors, do the interview at HWS, and write something that you are passionate about. Grace, again, this was awesome. I can't thank you enough. Looking forward to having you back in a year or two.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And thank you to all our listeners. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or admissions. Happy to help in any way.
It was our pleasure. And again, to everyone out there, good luck to you with your college search. Take care, all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process Podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process.